استماع خانم مریم رجوی در اجلاس گروه پارلمانی حقوق بشر و دموکراسی در ایران در کنگره آمریکا. اعلام ثبت قطعنامه شماره 166 کنگره آمریکا با امضای بیش از 150 عضو کنگره در اجلاس گروه پارلمانی حقوق بشر و دموکراسی در ایران.
سخنرانی نمایندگان کنگره، کلینتاک، رئیس مشترک گروه پارلمانی حقوق بشر و دموکراسی در ایران، عضو کمیتهٔ قضایی، رئیس زیرکمیته فرایند یکپارچگی، مهاجرت و امنیت، جمهوری خواه. شرمن، عضو ارشد کمیته خارجی، دموکرات. زوی لافگرن، رئیس دموکرات‌ها در کمیته اعلام، فضا و تکنولوژی، عضو کمیته قضایی. دیویس، عضو کمیته امکانات مالی، دموکرات. ماریو دیاز-بالارت، نایب رئیس کمیته تخصیص بودجه، رئیس زیرکمیته امنیت ملی، وزارت خارجه و برنامه‌های مرتبط، جمهوری خواه. گودن، عضو کمیته‌های قضایی و قوای مسلح، جمهوری خواه. کیت سلف، عضو کمیته خارجی، رئیس زیرکمیته اروپا، جمهوری خواه. رندی وبر، عضو کمیته علوم، فضا و تکنولوژی، جمهوری خواه. کوهن، عضو کمیته قضایی، رئیس مشترک گروه حقوق بشر و دموکراسی ایران، رئیس مشترک کمیته هلسینکی، دموکرات. و پروفسور آلخو ویدال-کوادراس، رئیس کمیته بین المللی در جستجوی عدالت، نایب رئیس پارلمان اروپا، 1999-2014.
کلینتاک: ما جمهوری خواهان و دموکرات ها در بسیاری از مسائل اختلاف نظر داریم، اما در حمایت از مردم ایران و مبارزه آنها برای رهایی از استبداد آخوندها کاملا متحد هستیم. به نمایندگی از مردم ایالات متحده با افتخار در کنار شورای ملی مقاومت ایران و برنامه 10 ماده آن برای ایرانی آزاد با جدای دین و دولت و غیر اتمی ایستاده ایم. ما قطعنامه شماره 166 مجلس نمایندگان را معرفی می کنیم که با همراهی 150 عضو مجلس نمایندگان از هر دو حزب ارائه شده است. این قطعنامه برنامه 10 ماده شورای ملی مقاومت ایران را تایید و حمایت می کند و متعهد می شود که تا بازگشت ایران به جایگاه شایستش در میان ملت‌های آزاد، شکوفا و صلح طلب، جهان به حمایت از مردم ایران و این برنامه ادامه دهد.
We meet today in the Capitol complex here in Washington, D.C. to hear from our special guest, Mrs. Meriem Rajavi, the President-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the leading opposition to the dictatorship that has caused so much suffering to the people of Iran and so much bloodshed and strife throughout the Middle East. We will then hear from Professor Vidal-Quadras, a former Vice President of the European Parliament and a victim of the atrocities of the Iranian dictatorship. The Iran Human Rights and Democracy Caucus is a truly bipartisan caucus representing a majority of the House of Representatives and comprised of both Democrats and Republicans. We differ and quarrel about many things, but we are solidly united in support of the people of Iran and their struggle to liberate themselves from the tyranny of the mullahs. Representing the people of the United States, we proudly stand with the National Council of Resistance and its 10-point plan for a free, secular, and non-nuclear Iran. The bipartisan Iran Human Rights and Democracy Caucus will serve as a forum in which members of Congress may address issues and developments relating to Iran, a country whose disturbing record on human and civil rights, as well as nuclear weapons development, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, support for terrorism, and attempts at regional hegemony are matters of the utmost security and foreign policy concern of the United States. By promoting dialogue and providing a regular flow of information, The Iran Human Rights and Democracy Caucus will seek to shape U.S. policy on Iran and provide members of Congress with documentation based on a range of viewpoints, including official U.S. and other governmental sources, non-governmental organizations, Iranian dissident groups, and leaders of the Iran-American community. We can all sense that the tide is turning. The Iranian regime has become a pariah among the civilized nations of the world and a supreme source of misery, injustice, and oppression for its own people. Such a state of things cannot last much longer, and I believe events are coming to a head. It's not inconceivable to me that within the next few years, we will be celebrating the liberation of Iran. I do want to make a very important announcement regarding this caucus and its support for the people of Iran. I'm pleased to announce, as has already been referenced, that we have just introduced today House Resolution 166, co-sponsored by Congressman Brad Sherman and myself, and joined by 150 members of the House of Representatives as original co-sponsors, representing a broad cross-section of the House of Representatives, Democrats and Republicans alike, united for the freedom of Iran. This resolution endorses the 10-point plan of the NCRI. It stands behind it and the people of Iran and their vital work, and it pledges to support that work until Iran has been restored to its rightful place among the free, prosperous, and peaceful nations of the world.
براد شرمن، رژیم خونریز و سرکوبگری که بر تهران حاکم است، نه تنها برای مردم ایران بلکه برای کل منطقه و جهان تهدیدی جدی است. به همین دلیل به همراه تام مکلینتاک قطعنامه ای را ارائه کردیم که خواهان یک ایران دموکراتیک مبتنی بر جدایی دین و دولت و غیر اتمی است، مطابق با 10 ماده‌ای که خانم مریم رجوی مطرح کرده‌اند.
I won't take long. I'm torn. On the one hand, we've got the whole intel community is going to brief the senior members of the Foreign Affairs Committee on the Iran oil exports and our sanctions. And on the other hand, I want to be here. So I will be briefer than usual. I'm pleased to be with so many colleagues and friends from the National Council of Resistance of Iran and the Organization of Iranian American Communities as we work someday to visit, or for many of you return, to a democratic, secular, peaceful, non-nuclear Iran. I'm honored to be with Miriam Rajavi, the President-elect of the National Council of Resistance in Iran. It was good to speak to you by phone just last month. This bloodthirsty regime occupying Tehran is a threat not only to all the people in Iran, but to the region and the world. That is why I've joined with my friend and fellow Californian Tom McClintock in introducing the resolution that was introduced today, calling, of course, for a democratic, secular, non-nuclear Iran, consistent with the 10 points that Miriam Rajavi has put forward. This legislation has 150 members introducing it, so I want to thank everyone here who's involved, and I realize it's been a long time that you've been fighting for a free Iran. We need to keep working on it. We have to remember 1988 and the massacre that occurred of so many political prisoners back then. And I've been working with you for 28 years, and I say I'm going to work with you for another 28 years, but we're going to get this done much, much sooner than that. But we'll be working with a democratic Iran. We'll be working on on good relations between the two countries. There will always be problems, and we will find solutions. They are hopefully on their last ropes, and I want to visit Iran. It's a beautiful country with such an incredible history. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. And now it's my honor to introduce the leader of the Iranian opposition, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance in Iran, Mrs. مریم رجوی.
سخنرانی مریم رجوی. خواست مردم ایران و تنها راه حل بحران ایران سرنگونی رژیم توسط مردم ایران است. سرنگونی رژیم خود به خود محقق نمی شود. یک مقاومت سازمان یافته و یک نیروی روی زمین عوامل ضروری تحقق این امر هستند. هر گونه سیاست قاطع در قبال این رژیم برای اینکه مؤثر واقع شود و به رهایی ایران و منطقه از یک رژیم بنیادگرای تروریست منجر شود، باید مقاومت ایران را به رسمیت بشناسد. من پیوسته تأکید کردم که ما به دنبال کسب قدرت نیستیم، بلکه در پی انتقال آن به صاحبان حقیقی یعنی مردم ایران و آراء آنها هستیم. شورای ملی مقاومت یک طرح برای دوران بعد از آخوندها در ایران دارد که در آن نقش مسیر انتقال قدرت را مشخص می کند.
Honorable representatives, allow me to begin by this. The situation of the Iranian society is explosive. During its 46-year rule, the religious fascism has never been so weak and fragile. The mullahs are surrounded from all sides by a society that is filled with anger and rebellion, by resistance units, by selfless and rebellious youth, and because of its bankrupt economy and corruption in the government, particularly after the overthrow of the brutal dictatorship of Assad and the collapse of the regime's strategic debt in the region. The regime is trying to preserve its shameful rule through widespread executions in Iran and by creating fear. Behruz Ehsani, one of the supporters of the MEK, after learning of his death sentence, said, "I will not bargain for my life. I'm prepared to give my life for the people of Iran to be free." Over the past 4 decades, this regime has executed more than 100,000 people on political ground. This book shows more than 20,000 of them. Over the past 4 decades, the regime has used negotiations as a tool for deception to continue its nuclear weapons program and its destructive policies in the region. The Iranian people's desire and the only solution to the Iranian crisis is the regime's overthrow by the Iranian people. Overthrowing the regime does not happen by itself. Although comprehensive sanctions have a considerable impact by weakening the regime, but they do not lead to its overthrow. An organized resistance and a force on the ground are the necessary elements to do the job. The People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran and the Iranian Resistance's nationwide network inside the country with the resistance units where women play a pioneering role, undertake brave and daring activities. In confronting a misogynist regime, women play the leading role. These resistance units are Iran's freedom fighters and the driving force for change. Any decisive policy on the Iranian regime needs to recognize the role of the Iranian resistance in order to be effective and lead to the liberation of Iran and the region from a terrorist fundamentalist regime. The right to resistance is recognized by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and American Declaration of Independence. Honorable representatives, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, with over 450 members from various tendencies, has been the most enduring political coalition in Iran's history. The NCRI has programs and specific plans for women's rights and freedoms, autonomy of nationalities, equality of followers of all religions, separation of religion and the state, and a non-nuclear Iran. I've always emphasized that we are not seeking to seize power, but to transfer it to its rightful owners, namely the people of Iran and their votes. The NCRI has a plan of action for the post-Mullahs Iran, outlining the roadmap for the transfer of power. The source of the policy mistakes regarding Iran over the past 4 decades has been ignoring the Iranian people by the failure to recognize this organized resistance and the existence of a democratic alternative. The resolution you introduced today presents a principled policy that emphasizes the Iranian people's desire to reject both religious and monarchic dictatorship, recognizing the rights of the Iranian people, the protesters, and the resistance units to confront the IRGC and repressive forces to bring about change and establish a democratic, secular, peaceful, and non-nuclear republic for the future of Iran. In these circumstances, a firm policy should include a series of necessary steps. First, activating the snapback mechanism leading to re-implementation of all the UN Security Council resolutions and the complete shutting down of the regime's entire nuclear program. Second, placing this regime under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter due to its threats to global peace and security. And third, recognizing the Iranian people's resistance for regime change and the resistance units' fight against the IRGC. Thank you all very much.
زوی لافگرن، من رئیس مشترک گروه پارلمانی زنان ایرانی هستم و می‌خواهم به طور ویژه از زنان ایران به خاطر شجاعت و بینش آنها قدردانی کنم. من به آنها عمیقاً افتخار می‌کنم. تغییر باید در داخل ایران رخ دهد، اما حضور در این گروه دو حزبی اهمیت دارد تا مردم ایران که به دنبال آزادی هستند بدانند که در خارج از ایران نیز حامیانی دارند که از آنها دفاع می‌کنند.
First, thank you so much, Mrs. Rajavi, for your testimony today, but also for your tremendous leadership in this fight for freedom in Iran. I want to thank you for that. As you know, we have strong bipartisan opposition here in the Congress against Iran's human rights violations, their malign regional activities, their nuclear ambitions. They have supported militia groups in Gaza, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, Syria, and others. They've exacerbated the conflicts, and this is in addition to the oppression they are engaging in Iran itself. I just want to say the examples of the heroism of the Iranian people, especially the women and young people, inspire us, courageously rising up against this oppressive regime and exercising their fundamental freedoms, and the Iranian government's reaction to these peaceful protesters. The violence and the force is abominable and something we all oppose. As you know, I'm the co-chair of the Iranian Women's Congressional Caucus, and I want to especially recognize the women of Iran for their courage and for their vision. I admire them so greatly. We know that change must occur in Iran itself, but it's important to be part of this bipartisan group so that the people of Iran seeking freedom know that they have advocates and friends who will stand up for them outside of Iran itself.
استیو کوهن نماینده کنگره آمریکا از حزب دموکرات، عضو کمیته قضایی، رئیس مشترک گروه حقوق بشر و دموکراسی ایران. من به دفاع از ایران آزاد در کنگره ادامه خواهم داد. نمی توانیم اجازه بدهیم که عاملان جنایت علیه بشریت در ایران بدون مجازات بمانند.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's an honor for me to be here as the co-chair of the Congressional Iran Human Rights and Democracy Caucus. I've long been a supporter of the Iranian people who advocate for a free Iran and a stronger support in Iran that is democratic and non-nuclear. Iranians deserve the freedom to express themselves, both online and offline, both with their vocal cords and the way they dress, and the right to peacefully assemble without fear of the government repression or retaliation, which we've seen so much of. I'll continue to promote these important values and advocate for a free Iran in Congress. We cannot let perpetrators for crimes against humanity in Iran go unpunished, nor can we allow the repression and censorship of Iranians to persist. Last Congress, I sponsored House Resolution 1148, which condemns the Iran regime's terrorism, regional proxy war, and internal suppression. This resolution was bipartisan with over 200 members of Congress as co-sponsors. It reaffirmed the House's commitment to holding the Iranian government accountable for its oppressive, fundamentalist, and authoritarian rule. As the region becomes more unstable, Iran's support of terrorism in surrounding areas is increasingly more dangerous. In order to help the Iranian people as well as our ally Israel, we must do what we can to counter Iran. The brutal treatment and sentencing of political prisoners to death has occurred, and people have been executed. Political prisoners in Iran have endured grave violations of their fundamental rights, including arbitrary arrest, torture, and the denial of a fair trial. Their cases reflect a systemic pattern of human rights abuses in Iran. The Iranian people deserve a government that respects their fundamental rights and freedoms, including the freedom of speech and assembly, gender, and to religious equality. Iranian American friends, thank you for being here and for your unwavering support in the fight for democracy and human rights in Iran. I think Iran is probably the weakest it's been in many, many years. And I think the Iranian people are very much aware of the limitations of their freedoms and their rights and the dastardly acts that they have engaged upon citizens who have simply protested, gone against a lot of people. I think Iran is ripe for change. I think it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen sooner than later. And I look forward to it, and I look forward to visiting a free Iran. Thank you very much.
دنی دیویس، بزرگترین جلسه‌ای که در تمام زندگیم در آن شرکت کردم، گرد همایی مقاومت ایران در پاریس بود. این طولانی ترین و آموزنده ترین جلسه‌ای بود که تا به حال تجربه کردم.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I am delighted to be here and be a part of this briefing and be a part of this caucus. Let me just commend you, first of all, for the tremendous leadership that you continue to provide and have provided over a period of time. I also want to say to you, Madam, that every time I hear you, I am inspired. I'm what is called an activist all of my adult life, and of course, being an African American whose ancestors were kidnapped and brought to another country, enslaved, the feeling of oppression is something that I have an understanding of. But the largest meeting that I've ever attended in my life, of course, was outside of Paris, France. The longest meeting and the most informative meeting that I've ever experienced. I was delighted to be there. I also want to commend all of you for the continuous resistance for continuing in the struggle. One of the individuals I admire a great deal said that struggle, strife, and pain are the prerequisites for change. And the way to fight, and the way that you're fighting oppression, knowing that at the end of the fight, there will be the freedom and liberation that you are seeking, and being able to sustain that and keep it going, and keep it going, keep it going, gives people the opportunity to admire you from every vantage point.
ماریو دیاز-بالارت. خانم رجوی الهام بخش ما و الهام بخش همه جهان است و به همه نشان می دهد که آرمان یک ایران آزاد زنده و فعال است و موفق خواهد شد. ما نباید از بیان حقیقتی ابا داشته باشیم که همه می دانیم. تغییر رژیم در ایران خدمتی به بشریت است و باید آن را با صدای بلند اعلام کنیم.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Clyntock, thank you for doing this very important meeting. It is a privilege to be in the video presence of Mrs. Rajavi, who is one of those people that inspires us all and who inspires the world and lets the world understand that the cause of a free Iran is well, it's living, it's active, and it will succeed. You know, I could spend hours talking about example after example, Mr. Chairman, of just the horrors that terrorist regime in Iran has caused to its own people and to the world, and obviously even to the national security interest of the United States. I'm a firm believer that the United States and the world is safer when the United States is not confused as to who our allies are and who our adversaries are. And let's be very clear. The regime in Iran is a pariah. It is a murderous, terrorist regime, and we should not be shy about admitting what we all know, that a change in regime in Iran is a service to humanity, and we should not be shy about expressing that openly. So very clearly, my message, Mr. Chairman, if I may, to the Iranian people who have struggled for so many years bravely and have not stopped fighting and working for that inevitable day of freedom of Iran, that Iran will be free because of the heroes within Iran and the diaspora who day in and day out not only dream but work and sacrifice for that inevitable day. And so thank you all for doing this. It's a privilege to be able to spend this time with you.
لانس گودن: معتقدم برنامه 10 ماده‌ای که ما سالها از آن حمایت کرده ایم آینده ایران است. ما در این مبارزه با شما هستیم و به آینده ای آزاد برای ایران در آینده بسیار نزدیک امیدواریم.
And now our next Texan, Congressman Lance Gooden.
Thank you all so much, and thank you to the many people in this audience that I have met over the years. And Madam Rajavi, thank you. I believe we last spoke in Paris personally, and I want to thank you for all you've done. This 10-point plan is something that we have all been very supportive of for so many years, and I believe it is the future for Iran. And I am so grateful for the thought that you've put into this, and for the support that you've built up around the United States Congress and across America and the world for what you and all of us believe in, and that is a free and democratic Iran. I appreciate all of the those of Iranian descent that are in this room and around the United States that are fighting for your country back home. So many have suffered for so long, and we are with you in this fight. The American people stand with you, and thank you, Madam Rajavi, for your leadership. We're looking forward to a free Iran in the very near future.
کیت سلف: هر انقلاب موفقی به یک رهبر شجاع و شفاف نیاز دارد. من شجاعت شما را تحسین می کنم.
Next, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Keith Self, Congressman from the state of Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now that we have 3 Texans on this end of the dais, I will say that, first of all, thank you for being here with us. And every successful revolution requires a courageous, articulate leader. And I mentioned the Texans because we went through our own Alamo, and we had courageous, articulate leaders that led us through that to be a sovereign nation before we joined the United States. So I applaud your courage. I want to address that I believe that at some point regime change will be regime survival will be paramount. And if Iran were to go nuclear, it would not only threaten nuclear blackmail or even destruction for some nations, but many other Middle Eastern nations would also want the same capability, and that is a dangerous situation. I returned from the Middle East on Friday, and I am concerned that we are reaching that stage. So I applaud your courage, and I will just say that this is something that bears close watching. And I know that the United States will. I had several assignments in the nuclear world, and this is a dangerous situation. So I applaud your courage, and I ask everyone to keep a close eye on this, because when the regime feels threatened, their survival will be paramount, and who knows what they will do.
راندی وبر: میخواهم از همه میهن پرستان حاضر در اینجا تشکر کنم. خانم رجوی: بابت تمام الهام بخشی شما سپاسگزارم. قرار گرفته است. آنها تضعیف شده‌اند، اعتبار خود را از دست داده‌اند و در سوریه قدرتشان را از دست دادند. الان بهترین فرصت است.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, it's a pleasure to be here, Madam Rajavi. It's good to see you again. You know, I'm thinking your initials, Maryam Rajavi, MR, might mean much resistance. What do y'all think? Huh? Come on now, y'all. I got to get y'all engaged. Colonel Self is correct. Iran is on its back heels. Y'all know that, right? We are at a special time in history, especially in the Middle East. Iran is back on its heels. They have been weakened. They have lost credibility and lost power in Syria. We strike, there's an old saying, Texas saying, right, Keith? You strike when the iron is hot. Some of y'all heard that. Okay. I want to say thank you to all the patriots out here. Thank you, Madam Rajavi, for all that you've inspired. And I can't say enough about it. You know, we had Resolution 1148 last year. We're going to come out with another one. We're going to get a better one. And we're going to get more people involved and more help. So keep the faith. Keep fighting, because help is on the way. If I can paraphrase, now is the time, Mr. Chairman.
پروفسور آلخو ویدال-کوادراس: برخلاف ادعاهای رژیم، یک آلترناتیو عملی و واقعی برای این حکومت دینی وجود دارد. شورای ملی مقاومت ایران یک گزینه سازمان یافته و دموکراتیک را ارائه می‌دهد که در قالب یک برنامه 10 ماده‌ای دقیق تعریف شده است. برنامه‌ای که هر فرد دموکراسی خواه در جهان می‌تواند آن را امضا کند.
آقای ویدال-کوادراس یک سیاستمدار کهنه‌کار اسپانیایی و نایب رئیس پیشین پارلمان اروپا تا سال 2014 است. او سالها از جنبش خانم مریم رجوی حمایت کرده و حتی هدف یک ترور از سوی رژیم ایران قرار گرفته است. پروفسور محترم، خوش آمدید.
House of Representatives, including the co-chairs of the caucuses for inviting me to this hearing.
متشکرم. از شما بسیار سپاسگزارم. رئیس کلینتاک محترم و اعضای برجسته مجلس نمایندگان، از جمله رؤسای مشترک این نشست که مرا برای ارائه شهادت در این جلسه دعوت کردند. همچنین درود ویژه می‌فرستم به دوست عزیزم مریم رجوی، رئیس جمهور برگزیده شورای ملی مقاومت ایران. برای من افتخار بزرگی است که در این جلسه مهم شهادت می‌دهم.
To testify before this esteemed caucus hearing. I extend my profound gratitude for your significant role.
عمیقاً از نقش ارزنده شما سپاسگزارم در حمایت از شورای ملی مقاومت ایران و سازمان مجاهدین خلق در حساس‌ترین و دشوارترین لحظاتشان. تلاش‌های من همراه با همکاران اروپایی‌ام معطوف به تقویت ابتکارات شما بوده است تا سیاستی قوی و مؤثر در برابر سرکوب رژیم ایران علیه مردم، پیگیری تهاجمی این رژیم برای دستیابی به سلاح اتمی و گسترش تروریسم آن تدوین شود. تروریسمی که اکنون نه تنها مخالفان ایرانی بلکه سیاستمداران در آمریکا و اروپا را نیز هدف قرار می‌دهد. تجربه شخصی من از تروریسم دولتی ایران به من این امکان را می‌دهد که با آگاهی مستقیم و واقعی در این بحث مشارکت کنم. همانطور که احتمالاً اطلاع دارید، من از یک سوء قصد در مادرید جان سالم به در بردم.
My personal ordeal with Iranian state-sponsored terrorism allows me to participate in this discussion with a real and direct knowledge of the subject. As you may know, I survived an assassination attempt in Madrid by a gunman, a French-Tunisian professional killer whose name is Mereth Ayari.
فرد مهاجم یک قاتل حرفه‌ای فرانسوی تونسی به نام محرز عیاری بود که در تاریخ 9 نوامبر 2023 از فاصله نزدیک به صورتم شلیک کرد. اما چرخش ناگهانی سر من چیزی شبیه به آنچه برای رئیس جمهور ترامپ رخ داد و همچنین گیر کردن اسلحه مهاجم باعث شد که از این حمله جان سالم به در ببرم. این حادثه نشانه ای از تحول شوم تاکتیک‌های تروریستی رژیم ایران است که اکنون با همکاری باندهای سازمان یافته جنایتکار و مافیاها مخالفان و اتباع خارجی را هدف قرار می‌دهد. این روش به آنها امکان انکارپذیری می‌دهد و تهدیدی جدی و جدید محسوب می‌شود. اما باید بگویم که اگر هدف رژیم از این اقدام شنی ساکت کردن من بود، کاملاً شکست خورده است. من نه تنها مرعوب نشدم بلکه اکنون مصممتر از همیشه هستم که تلاشم را برای دیدن پایان این رژیم سرکوبگر و جنایتکار افزایش بدهم.
I must say, however, that if the regime intended this vile act to silence me, it has utterly failed. Far from being intimidated, I am now even more resolute in my commitment to intensify my efforts to witness the end of this oppressive and criminal regime. From a European perspective, it is clear that our long-standing policy of engagement and appeasement with the Iranian regime
از منظر اروپایی کاملا روشن است که سیاست دیرینه تعامل و سازش با رژیم ایران نه تنها شکست خورده بلکه به منافع ما آسیب زده است. امنیت و منافع راهبردی اروپا و البته کشورهای دموکراتیک غربی ایجاب می‌کند که از تمامی ابزارهای غیر نظامی برای تسریع سقوط این دیکتاتوری وحشی استفاده شود. البته مسئولیت اصلی سرنگونی این رژیم بر عهده مردم ایران و مقاومت سازمان یافته آنها به رهبری شورای ملی مقاومت و سازمان مجاهدین خلق است. البته ایالات متحده و کشورهای اروپایی می توانند اقدامات بسیاری برای تسریع این روند انجام دهند.
Needless to say that we must urgently recognize and support the Iranian people's right to change their government.
ما باید فوراً حق مردم ایران را برای تغییر حکومتشان به رسمیت بشناسیم و از آن حمایت کنیم. این حمایت نه یک ایدئال بلکه ضرورتی حیاتی و فوری برای ثبات منطقه‌ای است. برخلاف ادعاهای رژیم، یک آلترناتیو عملی و واقعی برای این حکومت دینی وجود دارد. شورای ملی مقاومت ایران یک گزینه سازمان یافته و دموکراتیک را ارائه می‌دهد که در قالب یک برنامه 10 ماده‌ای دقیق تعریف شده است.
10-point plan that any Democrat in the world could sign.
برنامه‌ای که هر فرد دموکراسی خواه در جهان می‌تواند آن را امضا کند. این برنامه فقط یک نظریه نیست، بلکه در میان اعضای این شورا به اجرا درآمده و به طور مستمر به عنوان چشماندازی برای آینده ایران ترویج شده است. شورای ملی مقاومت ایران هرگز درخواست مداخله نظامی یا چکمه‌های روی زمین نداشته است.
I was pleased to observe that the resolution introduced by Mr. McClintock
با خرسندی مشاهده کردم قطعنامه‌ای که توسط آقای مکلینتاک ارائه شده و حمایت گسترده‌ای از هر دو حزب را جلب کرده است، به ظرفیت‌ها و برنامه‌های راهبردی مقاومت ایران اذعان دارد. این حمایت بدون شک در اروپا نیز بازتاب خواهد یافت و می توانم تأکید کنم که این بازتاب در اروپا کاملا ضروری است. زیرا اروپا گاهی در شنیدن واقعیت‌ها کمی بگذارید بگویم گوش‌هایش چندان تیز نیست. فروپاشی رژیم نه تنها موجب هرج و مرج نخواهد شد، بلکه منبع اصلی بی‌ثباتی در منطقه و اجازه بدهید بگویم در جهان را از بین خواهد برد. اکنون زمان آن رسیده که به سیاست 40 ساله مماشات غرب پایان بدهیم. سیاستی که فقط به رژیم در اجرای برنامه‌های استبدادی و بی‌ثبات کننده‌اش کمک کرده است. با نگاهی به آینده، یک جمهوری دموکراتیک در ایران عاری از دیکتاتوری دینی یا سلطنتی این ظرفیت را دارد که برای قرنها نیروی سازنده و تعیین کننده در خاورمیانه باشد. سپاسگزارم آقای رئیس.
As we look to the future, a democratic republic in Iran, free from religious or monarchical dictatorships, has the potential to be a constructive and decisive force in the Middle East for centuries to come. Thank you, Mr. President.
بسیار خوب، اجازه بدهید یک سوال کوتاه از شما بپرسم. شما خود قربانی خشونت دیکتاتوری حاکم بر ایران بوده اید. همه ما از شدت گرفتن خشونت‌هایی که آخوندها علیه مردم اعمال می‌کنند مطلعیم. چه پیام امیدبخشی برای مردم ایران دارید؟ کسانی که امروز با همان خشونتی روبرو هستند که شما نیز در خیابان‌های مادرید با آن مواجه شدید.
آنچه امروز می‌خواهم به مردم ایران بگویم این است که امید و اعتماد داشته باشند، زیرا این رژیم در ضعیف‌ترین و شکننده‌ترین وضعیت خود قرار دارد و پایان آن بسیار نزدیک است. آنها باید مقاومت کنند، اعتراضات خود را گسترش بدهند و از هزاران کانون شورشی حمایت کنند که با کارآمدی شگفت‌انگیز در سراسر کشور فعال هستند. مطمئن باشند که این وضعیت وحشتناک که 45 سال است آن را تحمل کردند برای همیشه ادامه نخواهد یافت. برعکس، پایان این رژیم ننگین بسیار نزدیک است.
خانم رجوی، از شما بسیار متشکرم. همچنین از همه شما که امروز در این نشست حضور داشتید و از تمامی کسانی قدردانی می‌کنم که در سراسر جهان برای آزادی ایران تلاش کردند. آن روز در راه است و فکر می‌کنم به زودی فرا خواهد رسید. پس بیایید تلاش کنیم تا سال آینده در تهران دیدار کنیم. از همه شما سپاسگزارم.